So it's finally been confirmed that Gabriel Bortoleto will fill the vacant seat at Sauber, which astonishingly means that in 2025, one quarter of the F1 grid will be made up of rookie drivers. And just so we're up to speed, this includes Jack Doohan at Alpine, Ollie Behrman at Haas, Gabriel Bortoleto at Sauber, Andrea Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, and Liam Lawson at either RB or Red Bull. I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that one. And yeah, some have already made their debuts, but as they're yet to complete a full F1 season, they're still rookies in my book. So overall, an amazing turnaround of events, considering where we were at the end of 2023, where no new drivers were being given any opportunities and serious questions were being asked about the stagnation of young talents. And then there's factors such as the lack of proper time on track and testing for these young drivers, and also the gulf between Formula 1 and Formula 2 at the lower formulas. Overall, there were serious questions whether these young drivers could really adapt to Formula 1. Because the last thing anyone wants to see is a young driver prematurely and also perhaps unfairly thrown onto the F1 scrap heap. But it seems recently that young graduates of the lower formulas, rookie drivers, are back in fashion. Teams are now more willing to give them a seat, and there's also perhaps a realization that if you give these guys a chance, you might be surprised. In fact, you probably will. So in contrast to last season, where it looked like rookies didn't stand a hope in hell in getting signed into a Formula 1 team full-time, let's look at now why F1 teams are signing rookies once again. But just before we go any further, thank you so much for the support, guys. Really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying the content as well, give it a like and also subscribe as well to stay up to date. Now, in 2024, for some reason, there seems to be a bit of a shift between the relationship of a driver's ability versus the quality of the car he's driving. And I'm sure you'll remember some claims people have made in the years prior where the driver doesn't matter and it's all the car. And these things nowadays pretty much drive themselves anyway. However, with the bunching of the grid that we've seen this season, and will probably be even more so next year, the drivers appear to make much more of a difference now. And this is very, very bad news for some of the drivers who can't hide behind the car anymore, whose fading abilities, lack of motivation, overall lack of talent is now fully exposed for the world to see. And a few times now we've seen young talent jump into a car and either match or outperform the very driver that they've replaced. So with all the track time that the driver that they're replacing has already had, how exactly does that happen? And some clear examples are guys like Franco Colapinto, who's making Williams wonder what the hell they were even thinking re-signing Logan Sargent. Or Oliver Behrman doing fantastic jobs in both a Ferrari and a Haas this season, securing valuable points for both and showed to be an obvious alternative to Kevin Magnussen. And then of course as well you had Liam Lawson, who showed us what an RB can do without Daniel Ricciardo driving it. It's almost like we're at the end of an era where obvious and shady pay drivers are allowed to exist because they're allowed to hide behind the car. But because of this bunching of the grid and bottlenecking, which I'm sure is going to get even more intense next year, teams must get the best possible person into the car. And yes, I'm aware all drivers bring in some form of sponsorship or financial benefit, but what I'm talking about is the real deal, serious pay drivers who are only there because of the money that they're bringing in. And if you went down that road, sure, you'll get this massive cash injection if you sign the likes of Guan Yu, Sargent, Mick Schumacher, Latifi, or Mazepin, but nowadays, that just will not get you anywhere. I mean, sure, you might have millions more in the bank, but all that money gets eaten up because of the repair bill, because they keep crashing the car, or finishing dead last, which means you're going to lose money in the Constructors' Championship anyway. And I hope that quick fix, which kind of existed before, isn't going to be the case for the near future. In the current state of F1, these pay drivers are of seriously low benefit and will do more harm to the reputation of the team by even being associated with one. And it's almost like something else has clicked with the teams where they've almost realized that having a safe pair of hands, that experienced driver, isn't quite the answer anymore either in some cases. So internally, behind closed doors within the team, they might offer a lot of knowledge and peace of mind and things like that, but to the outside world, to us the fans, some appear to be tired or stagnant or even offering very little anymore compared to what they once did. And I, for one, am actually quite pleased about this because it shows that the driver market is healthy again and the turnover rate of drivers is probably where it should be. And where a team, yeah, they might lose this old head, this driver who has lots of knowledge and experience and also a very well-known name as well. But then they gain a young, very hungry talent who, if correctly nurtured, could be huge. And for a midfield team where points are rare, that young talent could easily turn what would be normally in circumstances an 11th place into a 10th or a 9th. If you're a midfield team or a back marker team, that sort of thing makes so much difference. One reason perhaps is that a young driver is willing to take more risks that perhaps a more experienced, more comfy driver won't. Even when you consider some of the established names that won't be on the grid next season, guys like Bottas and Magnussen and Ricciardo, and perhaps even Perez, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. All of whom have had a fair crack, lengthy careers, but with any sport, it's now time for someone else to have a go. And yeah, sure, guys like Valtteri Bottas or Daniel Ricciardo now seem to be doing more interesting things on social media than they are on the track. And when that sort of thing starts to happen, surely then that's the time that you need to go. When you're more known for your social media than what you're doing on the circuit, it's a sign it's all coming to an end. And look, perhaps it was a case that all 10 teams were potentially terrified of giving a rookie a debut, hence why it hasn't happened on such this large scale in quite a long time. But when you consider what's at stake and also the potential for it to go wrong, you can't blame them really for having that experienced but unspectacular driver in the seats. Because if it all goes wrong, that experienced driver can just brush it off. But for the young driver, it could potentially end his career in one fell swoop, also perhaps through no fault of their own. But I sense the whole tide turned on this whole rookie driver thing when McLaren made a massive gamble and signed a very interesting young talent called Oscar Piastri, also in hilarious circumstances with the whole Alpine thing. And yeah, sure, there were some ropey, dodgy moments in the beginning, but McLaren's effort and belief in him eventually paid off. He won a sprint race in his rookie season, and he's also pulled off 2 race wins this season, so full speed ahead, Oscar. So rather than do what everyone else did, McLaren did try to do something different, and credit to them, it paid off. And in my opinion, they could have a future world champion on their hands. And I don't think this went unnoticed with the other teams on the grid, because I think all of them looked at McLaren and said, well, we want an Oscar Piastri too. It's almost like there was this revelation of, wait, what? You can sign rookie drivers now? And this was also then solidified further when Ricciardo was benched due to fracturing his wrist, and RB had to call upon a replacement in the form of Liam Lawson, at also spectacularly short notice too as well. He did a great job and immediately impressed, and there were calls to get him into a full-time race seat as soon as possible. And then the ball starts rolling, and suddenly these F2 and F3 drivers are being considered by top teams as proper substitutes and reserve drivers should any of their current lineup need to sit out a race. And then all of a sudden now you've got Behrman in a Ferrari or a Haas, or Lawson in an RB, or Colapinto in a Williams. But also you've got to remember that this influx of young talent is very exciting, but it hasn't always quite gone to plan. In his debut outing at Williams, Nick De Vries, although older than the average new driver, scored for the team on his debut. It looked like what could have been an inspired decision. So much so that AlphaTauri signed him up for 2023, and as we know, he was booted out pretty quickly afterwards. And also you can't disregard this either, but it seems that more drivers now are having to sit out races for various reasons, whether they're sick or injured, whatever. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's happening more often. And it's tragic for the first team driver, I know, but it's a blessing in disguise, because that gives the substitute an immediate opportunity to jump in the seat and show the team what he can do. And then there's Mercedes, who turned down a whole heap of drivers to sign Kimi Antonelli as Hamilton's replacement, who then returned the favour by crashing the car at a practice session. But despite this, Toto and Mercedes, they must know something, hence why they've signed him. Well, I hope they do, because otherwise it could be a very costly publicity stunt. And also from the fans' perspective, these 5 new drivers joining the grid next season is going to be brilliant, and it's a fantastic opportunity for new fans of Formula One, young fans of Formula One, to follow a driver from the very beginning of their career all the way up until the end. And I did that with Jenson Button, followed him from his very start all the way up until his very end. And it's a fantastic experience for any F1 fan to have. And also as the seasons go by, each year a new generation start following Formula One, and perhaps they want to support someone more relatable or similar in age, and this is probably the best way to do it. And plus it's great for the team because of the knock-on attention that they get from signing on this new driver who everyone wants to know about, and particularly as well on social media where all these new fans tend to live. And especially if you sign a driver from a very patriotic nation who is starved of an F1 presence, the amount of attention Sauber will get from Brazil next season after signing Bortoleto will be enormous. I mean, they are going to make an absolute killing in merchandise next season compared to the 4 Bottas caps that they've sold this year. And it's the same story with Franco Colapinto, because Argentina was converted to a Williams state overnight, so much so that Williams had to create merch for him due to the overwhelming demand from the fans. So overall, I think it's an excellent move for these teams, and it just sort of shows the good health of Formula One and its development process at the moment, if you will. Now, of course, we can't say how they're all going to do. It's far too early for that. But also we know that the world isn't made of Haribo and sunshine and rainbows. And statistically, they all can't be a success. Doohan, Bortoleto and Kimi Antonelli haven't yet driven a Formula One car in anger, and because of this will be making their full-on debuts next season. But interestingly, these 3 drivers have some quite sound teammates that they can learn some valuable lessons from. Doohan is alongside Pierre Gasly, Bortoleto with Nico Hülkenberg, and Kimi Antonelli with George Russell, so all of them should have a decent learning environment. Just as long, bear in mind, as they have the right attitude going into this, because if the attitude is wrong and their outlook is wrong, it is just going to go completely wrong for them. I just find it amazing still that 1/4 of the grid next season is going to be made up from rookies, and that could still be more because Franco Colapinto, we don't know what he's going to do yet, if he's going to be on the grid or not, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. But also it does raise the question of, do we need perhaps more testing sessions so that these young drivers can adapt, and perhaps even raise the argument again for 1 or 2 more teams? That would be 4 more seats to accommodate this wave of talent. And it also does make you wonder how much longer some of these older guys can hang in there. These guys like Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, how much longer can they hide behind not just so much the car, but also their name and reputation as well? Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Really appreciate the support. All the best, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.